So we will finish yesterday's lesson. Now the thing with Story of an Hour is one of the things that we're looking at. It's written in the same time period. Okay, it's a little bit later. I think Douglass was 1834, and I think Story of an Hour was 1843 or 44. So there's about a 10-year difference, not much, especially when it comes to social movements. But this is from the perspective of a woman. And you're going to have two prompts that you can choose from when you write your speech tomorrow. The first one is you're going to try to convince someone to vote for a law to abolish slavery. And the second one is you're going to convince them that all women should have equal rights. And so we've looked at in Panther Time incidents in the life of a slave girl, so that's slavery and women. And then, of course, you have Frederick Douglass, which is the slavery. And now we're going to look specifically at a one from a woman's perspective about what it was like to live in that time period, and the things that she felt and the things that she went through. And so that's kind of what you're looking at when we read this passage, okay? You're looking for what's it like for life as a woman, okay? And then you're looking for anything that you can use in a speech to persuade someone to legalize women's rights, okay? Underline anything that deals with how women are living, how they're treated. Hashtag anything you can use in a speech, okay? Anyone confused on the instructions? So the first thing we want to talk about is, if you look at the worksheet that I gave you, okay, we're going to focus on these skills, which is inference. Okay, it's a little bit different, inference with the fiction than it is with nonfiction. Nonfiction, of course, is real, whereas this is made up. So we will have a little bit of a difference there. And then we're going to look at the themes and how Douglass compares to this. The Declaration of Independence ties into this. And then we're going to look at how the author develops the character's ideas as the text continues. So we've got 3 standards for this one. All right, today is a stamp day. Okay, the first question that I have for you, and remember, to get a stamp, you only have to raise your hand. You don't actually have to have it correct. All right, so my first question, look at the first sentence of the story. Okay? And if you can't read the questions on the board because you're too far back, it is actually on your paper in front of you. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was affected with a heart trouble, okay, and heart trouble is underlined, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. Okay. Looking at word choice here, why do you think the author said a heart trouble instead of a weak heart or with heart trouble? Really good answers. It could be that she used a heart trouble to emphasize that the problems in her life, it wasn't her physical heart that was the problem. It was, and then you guys said that she was worried a lot, that she was scared, that she had mental issues. Not that she was insane, but that whatever was wrong with her was emotional or mental. And that it wasn't that her heart was weak, it was that it could be that she was lonely, okay, whatever her problems were. And I definitely think you guys are right about that. That's where the author's going with this, is that it's not a physical problem, because it actually says in there that she loved him sometimes, right? And it said in there that he was nice to her. So it wasn't that it was a abusive relationship like what Douglass had, but the problems were the same. Okay, and we're going to talk about kind of why that she felt that way. The character was introduced as Mrs. Mallard for the first half of the story. Okay, we learn her first name, Louise, after the news of her husband's death. What is the author trying to say about society with this literary technique? So what is the author saying about this time period by not telling us her name until after we believe her husband to be dead? Jeff? It is definitely commenting on women's role in society. Okay. I don't necessarily know that it was an actual law in the book so much as maybe an unwritten law, okay, that, well, that was a law. You couldn't vote. But in terms of your name, it was Mrs. Brentley Mallard. you were identified by whoever your husband was. So if you didn't have a husband, then yes, you had your own identity and your own first name. And that's kind of what it is here. It's identity. Who are you? Well, you're only the wife of this guy. And then with him gone, she actually becomes a person. So by bringing in her first name after his death, supposed death, that's where the author's telling us that's the only way for her to get an identity as to be a real person, is for her husband to actually die. Okay? Very good. Let's look up free in the dictionary. Okay? So that's step one. Go ahead and do that now. We've got the definition. That's all that matters. All right. So free, under looking up in the dictionary, is not under the control or power of another. Okay? And it can be used as an adjective, a verb, or an adverb.
Wait, you write this stuff, right? That you're writing?
You don't have to. This is the class discussion. You'll write the next part.
Oh.
Okay. That's why I didn't leave you space to write it. So when Miss Mallard says free, body and soul free, okay, how is she using the word free here? It could definitely be all of those, but it's in terms of adjective or a verb. So you're correct about that. You guys were right, though, when you said that it was emphasizing that she now has the power and she now has the control over her life. Okay. Let's talk about Frederick Douglass. How is her definition of freedom similar or different to Douglass's definition of freedom? So you're saying that with him, it's an actual freedom of the body, whereas her is a freedom mentally?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that she was free physically? Or
she was free mentally.
in her mind, was she free physically? The abuse wasn't necessarily that he was cruel to her, but by taking her choice away, and it specifically says in there that she had no control. So by taking her choice away, she equated it the same thing as being controlled. Okay, very good. All right, let's talk about Mrs. Mallard. So when we look at this and comparing it to Douglass, Douglass was pretty graphic, wasn't it? Like cry graphic on some of those abusive incidents. Here, in the mind of Kate Chopin, it's not any different, is it? Even though it's not the same physical pain, the treatment is the same according to the author's mind. Okay? Do you agree or disagree with that? Is when you look at the next page, okay, a lot of this story is ironic. Okay? And as a reminder, an irony is just a contradiction. Okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to go through and you're going to find 2 examples of irony. Okay? And you're going to write it right here. Okay? And then you're going to do the actual quote from the story, okay, that proves that, hey, this is why it's ironic. And then you're going to look at that and you're going to go, what effect? Okay, the fact that this is ironic, how does it deal with developing one of the themes? Okay, there's a lot of symbols. I want you to find 3. I know some of you were not here at the beginning when I went over symbolism. So colors, numbers, names, descriptions of, and by descriptions I mean like nouns, which kind of is a contradiction because descriptions are adjectives and adverbs, but I just put objects instead of descriptions. Right. And objects, those are going to be your symbols, okay, in literature. So if you weren't here at the beginning when I went over that, there's a quick recap for you, okay? When you're done with that, you will go through here, and this is the comparison that we're going to start with Douglass and Chopin. What ideas about women's rights can you find in the text? And you're going to give me 2. Okay? And then what is your textual evidence to prove that? Okay. How do you know that she's talking about women's rights here? And then at the bottom, there's a writing prompt. Now, up to this point, you're going to work with your partner. Okay? When you get to the writing prompt, you'll split with your partner and you'll do the writing by yourself. Okay? So what you're going to write about is comparing and contrasting the treatment of slaves to that of women. Okay? And we've talked a little bit about it, and that's why I said you didn't have to write that part down, because this is tied to that discussion, and this is where you'll do the writing part. Your goal is 100 words to write that. Key part, evidence from both texts. Evidence from both texts. Okay? Any questions on the task?